Welcome to Viewpoints. My name is Heather Isvaron, and with me today is Steve Lieberman with the Naval Postgraduate School. Welcome, Steve.
Hi, thanks for having me, Heather.
Sure. Now you work with the MOVES Institute here at NPS. Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
That's right. It's MOVE stands for the Modeling, Virtual Environments, and Simulations Institute, and it's a research center here at Naval Postgraduate School that focuses exclusively on creating virtual environments, models of all things defense and security related, and simulations. So my part is focusing on the modeling and simulation of people, societies, human groups.
That is so fascinating, and you've developed this great theory and research on social networks and how splinter groups integrate into larger society. Can you explain how you developed that project and kind of what it's all about?
We wanted to understand what the factors are in society that can make people violent as individuals or as groups. We wanted to have a way of identifying and forecasting whether groups are going to become violent by splintering off from the rest of society. And we wanted to do it with data that we already have. So we didn't want to go out and have to collect a whole bunch of data about the beliefs and interests of individuals, because it's very hard to get. And frankly, there's a lot of it already out there. So what we can do with this is we have information about beliefs, values, interests, along with sociodemographic characteristics of different populations. So in the United States, for example, there's a general social survey that's conducted every other year in the United States. And that surveys all the United States, asks them questions about the things they believe in, such as, how much do you trust the local newspaper, or how important is family life to you? How much time do you spend with your family? How important is a sense of community at your local religious institution? How often do you attend? So there's a lot of information like that, along with information about their age, occupation, socioeconomic status, and things, and we can get a interesting picture of not only the representative individuals, but how they talk to each other and how they form groups in society. That's what we have.
So interesting. And so you actually build models that can predict?
Well, what we've done is we've taken that survey data, and there's a lot of it, not just for the United States, but also for a lot of other countries that we might be interested in from a security and defense perspective that are open source out there. We take that and we put it into a network model, which is where my science comes in, and that is a representation of individuals as nodes, and they're linked to all the other individuals in the population on the basis of how likely they are to interact. So you kind of take all those factors together, and we analyze all those sociodemographic, sociocultural, socioeconomic factors, and come up with literally a picture of the trust and influence that exists within a society.
And how did you validate those models?
Well, what we can do, and this gets back to your question about how do you forecast, right?
Right.
How do you forecast something, and why would you trust it? So, in actual, the General Social Survey is really another good example of that. It's a survey that's done in waves. So we have longitudinal data. We have, I think it's all the way from 1972. Year after year, we can track changes in people's belief patterns, along with people's socioeconomic status. So what that enables us to do is take, let's say, data from 1995, and we can put it into the model so we can get that picture of what society looks like in 1995. We can get a picture of like 2005, and we can see what the population looks like in 2005. So we have both of those snapshots already. But what the model really allows us to do, that's great, in addition to just kind of looking at the static picture and seeing that some groups might exist that appear to be outside of mainstream society, or we understand that a certain group might become more violent over time. We can get a moving picture, like a real movie of society. So we have that 1995 data set and that 2005 data set. We put the 1995 data set into the model, and we let it run. So we let it do the forecasting, and we can see that when it matches up with the 2005 data set, then we know that we can trust that the model is giving us some sort of authentic representation of where the society is likely to be. So the easy way to validate it, and it goes right along with using real data, is that we can validate it with historical data. So we take 1975 and 1985, it looks good. We take 1985 and 1995, it looks good. 95 to 2005. So then we're interested in what's going to happen in the future. But if we can validate through all those periods of time, then we can be reasonably trustworthy that the model is going to at least give us some near-term forecasts.
So if we were going to put some skin on these models, are there examples in society where you could put a group that might be prone to violence and how to predict that behavior?
Yeah, I mean, there's examples everywhere. I think some of my favorite examples from recent times are the Fort Dix. We talked about this a little bit before. This was a group of guys who shared a lot of the kind of base social demographic characteristics, social factors we call them, which are anything that contributes to your beliefs, your values, your interests, your propensities to be violent, your propensities to pursue education, to do anything. So we had this group of individuals that shared some similar background. Not that much, but enough that separated them from the rest of society in terms of their background. So they started talking more and more. And what happened over the years is that since they were talking more and more amongst themselves because of those kind of first few factors, they started integrating more and more just as a group and less with society until they became outwardly violent and planned this attack.
That's completely fascinating. So say we have public safety officials in our audience who may be interested in learning how to use this model with the splinter groups that may be in their own communities. How would you go about doing that?
Well, there's a lot of interest. A lot of people have looked into that as an application, and it proves to be very valuable because the data exists for the most part to feed the model. And it doesn't have to be a multi-million-dollar, multi-year collection effort. It is just social factors. It's what people believe in. So a lot of what public safety officials already know is what's important to the community. So you want to know what's important to the overall community, and then what might be different in terms of what's important to a group. So as in right here in Salinas, let's say we've identified a splinter group, a gang mostly young urban minorities. They seem to be very successful at recruiting new members. It looks like they're growing every year, and it looks like there's very little we can do to stop it. So we want to know why, and the model can show us why they've been so successful at recruiting, why they continue to grow. It can show us, for instance, they feel like they need to splinter from the rest of society because they're not getting what they need out of the system in terms of, potentials for respect or economic status, something like that. And it'll give us a way to see, okay, well, they feel that they can serve themselves by, like the Fort Dix folks, really kind of coming together independently from the rest of society. But at the same time, they share some of the other beliefs and values and interests of society that society shares at large. Everybody really values economic achievement. Most people value some sense of family life. And the people that are in this gang are the people, more so the people that have the potential to join, probably feel the same way about a whole host of issues, that if they were accentuated, if we could put the spotlight really on the issues that are similar between the potential gang members and the rest of the community, we could start integrating those people back, which will eventually pull in the rest of the gang. So it'll weaken it over time. And there are many ways to do this. It really takes local knowledge. This is all local at the end because you're dealing with individuals. But sometimes that means putting the really violent people behind bars. Sometimes it means making officers very visible on the streets so people know that they can have a sense of protection in the community. Sometimes it means constructing real after-school programs. I mean, it can mean a whole host of things. But the idea is always to get people back into the mainstream society. It's really to deal with the root causes, the social factors that lead to violence. And one of the immediate benefits we get from the model is that you can look at a snapshot of where your society is right now at the city level, at the local level, or at the national level, and you can see really, you can justify your expenditures on various tools that you have. It gives officials an immediate way to show that what they're doing is making a difference.
So knowledge is power, right? So
That's
they
right.
can forecast these potentials. They can also identify what works in their community, and then they can wrap all that up and predict and use risk and make that assessment of what they're going to invest in. And this is a great way for them to invest their time and resources.
That's absolutely right.
So they're not just identifying the risk of the folks that are most likely to splinter off.
They are doing that, but it's not the only thing.
Yeah, I know, and
Right.
that's the cool thing, is that they can also learn how to and use the factors of bringing those people that are at risk back into the larger society.
Yes, and they can show what they're doing is going to be effective.
Okay, so say our public safety officials in the audience would like to get a hold of this information and maybe how it works at a deeper level. How would they do that?
Oh, you can log on to the website as the best way, and it's got my contact information there. Also, I'd be more than happy to talk to anybody who's trying to make a difference.
Great, well done. Thank you so much for your time
Thank
today.
you for having me.